Have you ever had one of those microscopic moments in a conversation? You know the kind I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
You're sitting across from someone, maybe a boss, maybe a partner, maybe a parent, and they look you in the eye and say something that sounds morally just impeccable.
Impeccable is the right word. It sounds bulletproof.
Exactly. They say, we just need to be more mature about this, or maybe we
Yeah.
really need to practice acceptance here.
Mhm.
And you nod. You feel this immediate wash of relief, a sense of agreement. You think, yes, absolutely, that makes sense. Maturity is good. Acceptance is good.
It's a soothing feeling. It feels like a resolution. The tension in the room just drops.
Right. But then, maybe an hour later, or you're on the drive home and the adrenaline wears off and you get this sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach.
Yeah.
You replay the conversation and you realize you didn't actually agree with the truth of what they said. You just agreed with the sensation of being soothed. You agreed with the word, but not the reality behind it.
It is a very specific, very unsettling phenomenon. And according to the material we are diving into today, that moment, that split second where you mindlessly nod, is exactly where a Stoic would, stop the tape.
They hit pause.
They hit pause right there.
Yeah.
Not to be difficult, not to be a contrarian, but to ask a really annoying, absolutely necessary question.
Oh.
Am I agreeing with the truth, or am I being led by a concept that has been displaced?
Displaced. That is the key word here. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are unpacking a concept that the source material calls the trap of beautiful words, or more technically, concept switching. And I think this is going to resonate with a lot of you because it feels like we're seeing this everywhere, from corporate value statements to, arguments over who does the dishes.
It is everywhere, and it's crucial to understand right off the bat that we aren't talking about lying. Lying is crude. It's easy to spot.
Right.
If I say, I didn't eat the last cookie while I have chocolate on my face, you know I'm lying. Concept switching is much more subtle. It's when you take a word that everyone respects, a beautiful word, like maturity, positivity, freedom, acceptance.
And you just quietly hollow it out.
You scoop out the insides.
Yeah.
Exactly. You keep the shiny, respectable exterior, but you replace the internal definition with something else. Usually something that benefits the system or the person talking to you rather than you.
So it's a bait and switch. You think you're buying a luxury car, but when you open the hood, it's just a hamster on a wheel.
Precisely. But because the car looks so nice on the outside, and because luxury is a good thing, you feel crazy for questioning the engine. The source material argues that this is a primary mechanism of control in modern life.
Wow.
It relies on our desire to be good people to manipulate our behavior.
That is fascinating and a little terrifying. So let's get into the gears of this. The sources provide what they call the anatomy of the switch. They highlight two major concepts that get switched constantly: maturity and acceptance.
Right.
Let's start with maturity. To me, maturity just means, acting like an adult, paying your taxes, not throwing a tantrum. How do you switch that?
Well, let's look at the original definition, particularly the Stoic definition. Maturity is about self-determination. It's about taking ownership of your choices, facing consequences head-on, and having the internal fortitude to do what you believe is right, even if it's hard.
So it's an active state.
It's an active state. It's about standing on your own 2 feet.
Okay, that sounds like a virtue. That sounds like something I want to be.
It is. But think about how the word is used in a frantic office meeting or a tense family dinner. When someone says, I need you to be mature about this, are they usually asking for your self-determination?
No, not at all. Usually they're asking you to stop arguing. They want you to sit down and be quiet.
Exactly. The switch happens when maturity slides into, meaning silence for the sake of peace. It starts to mean enduring unfairness without complaint, or adjusting yourself so you don't bother anyone else.
It's a shift from owning your actions to suppressing your reactions.
That's it.
That's a massive difference. One is about strength, the other is about compliance. It's like when someone says, be the bigger person, it sounds like a compliment.
But it's actually a command.
It's a command to absorb the damage so everyone else can stay comfortable.
Right. And the Stoic check here is ruthless. You have to ask, does maturity in this context mean taking responsibility, or does it mean taking a loss? Because those are two very different things.
And there's the trap.
This is why it works, because the word maturity is used. If you object, what does that make you?
Immature.
Exactly. You're trapped by the binary. You want to be the mature one, so you accept the silence, you swallow the unfairness, because you don't want to lose the label of adult.
Okay, so the other big one mentioned is acceptance. Now this is huge in Stoicism. Amor fati, love your fate, accept what happens. I feel like this one gets weaponized constantly, especially in the wellness world.
It does. And it's perhaps the most dangerous switch.
Yeah.
Because it borrows directly from the philosophy to undermine it. In Stoicism, acceptance is a tool for mental hygiene. It is about making peace with what you literally cannot control.
The famous dichotomy of control.
Right. The weather, death, the passage of time, the fact that the subway is late. If you can't change it, don't scream at it.
If it rains on your wedding day, screaming at the clouds is futile. Acceptance is the only rational path. It frees up your energy.
But the switch happens when acceptance is applied to things that can and should be changed.
Give me a concrete example of that switch in action.
Think about a toxic workplace. You have a manager who is abusive, or the workload is mathematically impossible. I mean, you're doing the work of 3 people.
Sure.
You go to HR or a mentor and they tell you, you really need to work on acceptance. You can't let this get to you. You need to be more resilient.
Oh, I hate that. They're treating a systemic failure like a weather event, like it's just a thunderstorm you have to endure.
Bingo. They are asking for resignation, but they're calling it acceptance. When a boss or a partner tells you to practice acceptance regarding their bad behavior, they aren't teaching you philosophy. They are asking you to disable your alarm system.
That distinction is so critical. Accepting the uncontrollable versus resigning to injustice.
Yes.
If you don't spot the difference, you end up living a very exhausting life trying to accept things that are actually just violations of your boundaries.
And the worst part is the guilt. You sit there thinking, I must be a bad stoic or I must be weak, because you feel angry. But in reality, your anger is the correct response to injustice.
Yeah.
We're trying to apply a spiritual tool to a practical problem that requires action, not submission.
So why do we fall for this? I like to think of myself as a critical thinker. I read the books, but I know I've nodded along to this stuff 1,000 times.
We all have.
The source material goes into the psychology of it, and it mentions something called cognitive ease. Is this just a polite way of saying our brains are lazy?
Efficient is the charitable term, but yes. The brain is an energy-conserving organ. It burns a lot of calories to think critically. It prefers words that feel just right over deep analysis. It's about finding a cognitive resting point. Words like positive, understanding, grown-up, or team player, they're like soft armchairs for the mind. When we hear them, we want to sit down.
We nod before we ask, wait, positive in what sense?
Exactly. It feels good to agree. It feels like friction to disagree. And nobody likes friction.
No.
And connected to that is the concept of the moralization of emotion. We all have this deep-seated desire to be the good person. We want to be the hero of our own story.
Yeah, of course.
So questioning a concept like positivity feels physically painful to the ego because we don't want to be on the wrong side. We don't want to be the negative person.
It creates a false binary. If you question positivity, you must be negative. If you question maturity, you must be childish.
And the trap makes us feel like we're living morally when actually we're just living more easily emotionally.
Yeah.
We're avoiding the friction of clarification. We trade truth for comfort because it feels nicer in the moment.
There's also a huge social component mentioned here, the consensus trap. This really stood out to me, especially regarding corporate culture.
Oh, absolutely. Vague concepts allow groups to agree without actually committing to anything. It greases the wheels of society.
Yeah.
If we all agree to do this for the sake of fairness, we can end the meeting early. Everyone nods. But if we stop to define fairness, does fairness mean equal opportunity or equal outcome or meritocracy? We might be there all day.
And nobody wants to be the person who keeps everyone in the meeting at 4:55 p.m. on a Friday. There's a fear of exclusion. If you ask for a definition, you're seen as causing trouble or being difficult.
Which brings us to the hidden mechanisms of control. The source material argues that this isn't just accidental sloppy language. It functions as a form of soft power.
Soft power.
Systems, whether it's a corporation, a political party, or even a family unit, rely on individuals to self-correct, to fit these vague moral standards. They don't have to force you. They just set a vague standard like, be a team player, and you force yourself into a pretzel trying to meet it.
There's a specific mechanism mentioned called level switching that I found fascinating, but I had to read it twice to get it. It seems really important for understanding how we get manipulated. Can you break that down?
This is critical, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Level switching is when a concept that is valid at the individual level is applied to the collective or systemic level to absolve the system of responsibility.
Okay, give me an example, like the phrase, take responsibility for your emotions.
Exactly. That is valid, powerful advice for an individual sitting alone in a room or working with a therapist. You are responsible for how you process your feelings. You shouldn't scream at people just because you're mad. But when a company uses that phrase to dismiss employees who are burned out by an impossible workload, that is level switching. They're using a tool for personal growth as a shield for systemic failure.
So they're shifting the burden of the problem from the structure to the individual. They're saying the problem isn't the fire in the building, the problem is that you aren't fireproof.
Right. The problem isn't that we are understaffed, the problem is that you aren't resilient enough. It turns a managerial failure into a personal moral failing of the employee.
That is infuriatingly common.
And the source brings up Marcus Aurelius here. He's often the poster child for Stoicism. But he didn't use Stoicism to escape his duties as emperor. He didn't use acceptance to ignore the plague or the wars.
No, he used it to fulfill his duties better.
Yes, he didn't use the philosophy to excuse the system. He used it to navigate his role within it. He never confused his internal peace with the external reality he had to manage.
And then there's intent switching. This is where we have to ask the question, who benefits?
Right. This is the cynical but necessary check. Words are often used not to help the individual live well, but to help the system run smoothly. The Stoic question is, who benefits if I understand this concept in this specific way?
So if the definition of loyalty means I never ask for a raise, who benefits?
Not you. The company benefits.
Yeah.
Or the boss who wants to keep his budget down. Precisely.
If keeping the peace means I never tell my brother that his behavior is hurtful, who benefits?
He does. He gets to keep acting that way without consequence. You pay the cost.
Man, when you strip it down like that, you start to see the toll this takes. The source talks about the existential toll of living this way, and it's not necessarily a tragedy, right? It's not like your life explodes overnight.
No, and that's why it goes unnoticed for so long. It's described as an offbeat feeling, a low-grade ambient fatigue. It's a sense that your life doesn't quite belong to you.
You're doing all the right things, saying the beautiful words, nodding at the right times, but you feel hollow.
Yes. And it's the erosion of the moral self.
Yeah.
We lose the ability to distinguish between necessary endurance, which is a virtue,
Right, a virtue.
and trained compliance, which is just fear wearing a costume.
And that leads to self-censorship.
It does. We stop asking, is this true for me? And start asking, is this considered wrong by others? We outsource our judgment to the dictionary of the crowd.
Which results in that emotional disconnect. I think we've all felt this. You feel angry, but you tell yourself to be mature. You feel hurt, but you tell yourself to be positive. It's like you're gaslighting yourself with a thesaurus.
Gaslighting yourself with a thesaurus. That is a perfect way to put it. And eventually that accumulation explodes. You either burn out or you have these sudden extreme outbursts because the reality of your experience has been suppressed by these beautiful, heavy words for too long.
You snap.
You snap, and then everyone says, wow, that was very immature. And the cycle continues.
Okay, so this is grim. We're tired, we're manipulated, and we're nodding along to our own exhaustion. But this is a Stoic guide, so there has to be a way out.
There is.
The source emphasizes that the Stoic goal isn't to fix society. We aren't going to go out and police how people use words, right?
Right, that's outside our control. You cannot force your boss to use the dictionary definition of fairness. You can't force your family to understand maturity the way you do. The goal is to protect internal clarity.
It's a strategy of internal dialogue.
Exactly. You accept that society needs vague words to function. We can't stop every conversation to define terms, but you refuse to let those vague words define your personal reality.
So let's get into the toolkit. The source breaks this down into 3 main strategies. The first tool is making it concrete.
This is your sword. It cuts through the fog. When you hear a beautiful concept, you ask a simple question. If I believe this, what specific behavior does it require? You force the abstract into the physical.
Can you walk us through an example?
Sure. Let's say someone tells you to show some team spirit. That's the concept. It sounds
Yeah.
nice. Who doesn't want team spirit? But you stop and ask yourself, what specific behavior does team spirit require right now in this situation? Does it mean helping a colleague who is struggling with a task? Or does it mean staying 3 hours late, unpaid, to fix a mistake management made?
If the concept doesn't lead to clear action, or if the action is exploitative, the source calls it a floating concept.
Exactly. It's dangerous to live by floating concepts. You need to anchor them in behavior. If you can't pin it down to a specific fair action, don't let it drive you. You detach the beautiful word from the demanded behavior.
You can say to yourself, I value the team, but I do not value unpaid overtime.
You separate the two, yes.
That leads into the second strategy, which is the void, which sounds a bit ominous, but I think it just means being okay with being clueless.
It's the willingness to say, I don't know yet, or I'm not clear on what you mean. In a fast-paced world, pausing to say, I don't understand the terms of this agreement, feels weak. We are trained to have an answer immediately.
We nod to fill the silence.
But for a Stoic, that pause is strength. It's accepting the discomfort of not immediately nodding along.
It's basically refusing to sign the contract until you've read the fine print, but for social interaction.
Yes, it's allowing a silence to hang in the air. Someone says, we need to be flexible here. You stop. You don't nod. You say, when you say flexible, what does that look like specifically in terms of my schedule?
And there might be an awkward pause.
That is the void. You have to be strong enough to sit in it. That silence is where the truth usually comes out.
And then you have the third tool, the control filter.
This is the classic Stoic racer. You constantly filter these incoming concepts through the lens of, is this asking me to control the uncontrollable? Or is this absolving me of what I can control?
So if someone says, don't worry about the layoffs, just have faith, the control filter would say?
It would say, having faith is fine, but it doesn't change the layoffs. Faith is internal. What I can control is updating my resume and saving money. It moves you from passive hope to active preparation.
It stops you from using faith as an excuse to do nothing.
Yes.
Let's look at how this plays out in real-life scenarios. The source gives a couple of specific examples. Let's go back to the workplace, because that's where I feel this happens most often.
Sure. So, your boss asks you to demonstrate dedication. Beautiful word. We all want to be dedicated. The non-Stoic gets emotional, maybe feels guilty for leaving at 5 p.m., works all weekend to prove they are good.
And then resents it.
Right. The Stoic doesn't get emotional. They don't react to the word dedication. They ask for boundaries. They might say, I am dedicated to the quality of this project. To ensure that quality, I need to rest this weekend so I can review it with fresh eyes on Monday.
It's not about being lazy. It's about clarity. It's redefining the term to match reality.
It's about not letting the word dedication be a blank check for exploitation. You are taking ownership of the definition. You are deciding what dedication looks like for you, not letting the system decide for you.
What about the family scenario? This one hits hard for a lot of people. You're told to endure for the sake of harmony. Maybe it's a difficult in-law or a conflict that keeps coming up at holiday dinners.
This is tough because the emotional stakes are higher. You love these people, but the Stoic separates the value harmony from the behavior enduring.
So they ask,
does enduring here actually create harmony? Or does it just avoid a necessary, difficult conversation?
If enduring just means sweeping things under the rug, it's not harmony, it's procrastination.
Exactly. You are just delaying the conflict and usually making it worse because the resentment builds up. Real harmony might actually require not enduring. It might require speaking up. It might require a messy argument to get to a resolution. But the beautiful word harmony is being used to silence you, to maintain a superficial peace.
Now, the source is honest about the consequences of this. I appreciate that they didn't sugarcoat it. If you start doing this, you start clarifying and questioning beautiful words, you aren't going to win a popularity contest.
No, you won't. You will seem slower because you are pausing to think. You will seem less agreeable because you aren't automatically nodding. You might feel lonelier.
Why lonelier?
Because you are removing the comfort of hiding behind those beautiful words. You are stepping out as the collective fog.
It makes you the person at the dinner party who asks, what do you mean by that? Instead of just clinking glasses. That can be annoying.
It can be. It disrupts the flow. But the trade-off is that you get to keep your mind. You get to keep your sense of reality. You stop feeling that offbeat hollowness we talked about earlier.
You trade popularity for integrity.
You do.
The source ends with a really beautiful idea about the true promised land. It's not a place where everything is perfectly defined and clear, is it?
No, that place doesn't exist. Humans are messy. Language is messy. The promised land here is a state of mind where you can survive the lack of clarity without betraying yourself.
And you realize that concept switching isn't usually malice.
Right. It's not a conspiracy. It's a survival mechanism for everyone else. They use it to get through the day.
So we don't need to be angry at them. We don't need to be the word police.
Exactly. You don't have to correct them. You don't have to stop the meeting and lecture everyone on the definition of maturity. You just have to ensure you aren't correcting yourself into a lie. You can let them have their vague words, as long as you know where your boundaries lie.
This has been such a powerful deep dive for me personally. It really makes you rethink every time you nod your head in agreement. It makes you realize how much of our social life is just autopilot.
It does. It forces you to slow down.
Yeah.
And that is a very stoic thing to do. In a world of speed, the pause is a revolutionary act.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with the final question from the source material. It's a heavy one, so maybe sit with it for a bit.
It cuts right to the core. The question is, when you use a concept to explain how you live, are you clarifying your responsibility? Or are you just finding a word beautiful enough to avoid having to change?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving in with us.
Always a pleasure.